6 p.m. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would anyone like to lead us in the pledge? Okay, thank you, Rocket.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rocket. Thank you, everyone. We have no local liquor board items tonight. The next topic is order of agenda. Any changes? Nope. That brings us to the select board portion, and we will start with public comments. So we'll start with people in the room. I'd like to ask everyone to address the select board as a whole, identify yourself and the town that you live in, and refrain from any personal attacks. So it looks like we've got one person up.
Hi, my name is Laura Simon, and I sent you all some written comments. I have some extra copies here if you haven't had a chance. I'll give them to you at the end, or to anyone else here who might want a copy. But I'm here because I understand the select board is soon to decide about whether to sign a contract for the logger at the town forest. And I understand that the select board has approved of the Hartford Conservation Commission's plan to cut in the town forest. And you did that in 2020. However, I've been talking to some neighbors to the town forest and other folks around town. And a few people are telling me some things they're concerned about, including even the minimal cutting that's been done by the high school kids. And they're saying it's really a mess. But I'm all in favor of kids learning. It's just, I think there's different perspectives on this issue. And you may hear from some folks locally who have some concerns. So I'm hoping that you would consider postponing a decision about signing the logger's contract until two events that are coming up. One is this week on Thursday. The Hartford Conservation Commission is doing a walk in the town forest. It would be wonderful if a few of you can come. I am not doing this because I want to give them a hard time for all the hard work they've put into this. But as I said, I think there are people who have different perspectives on this. And I have invited someone who is an ecologist. And while we go through the woods, they may make some points about, well, what about this issue? And if you can come, you'll hear a little bit of the both perspectives. Another event that's scheduled is May 31st, 6:30 at Bugby. Again, I want to invite you and everybody who's listening and here that we brought in somebody who's a biologist. He has a PhD, and there may be a couple other speakers, including a woman that we talked to recently. And I gave the town this article, a few people, I'm not sure who wound up getting it, but it was about the Barrytown forest and the residents there and how upset they were after the forest was cut. So I'm sure I'm going to see whether that person's going to come, and the biologist. And the written comments I gave you, I'm going to try to just briefly touch on them. And that is that 80% of Hartford, like the whole of Vermont, is forested, but most of that is private. And we have a Vermont Climate Action Plan that says we have to increase our trees that aren't being cut to 9%. Yet the plan that we have now for cutting in the forest says 2,300 trees will come out. There's an area that's called a patch cut, which is very similar to a clear cut. So it's hard to picture how we're going to reach these goals of increasing 9% when the only land that we really have to make decisions about is the town forest and public lands. And also the Hartford Selectboard approved a climate action plan for Hartford. And I was going over that plan recently and realizing there's not a lot in there about forests, but the one thing there is, I think you should give a little attention to, and that is Hartford Climate Action Plan says that we will increase tree coverage, canopy coverage by 900 acres. 90, thank you. So how are we going to do that if we're cutting? And, you know, again, we've got people with private land development. I don't see how we're going to make some progress that we need to make to deal with climate. So I am going to point out that Claire Potter wrote an article April 25th. It was referring to a logging project probably within an hour of here in a national forest. And one of the things that was pointed out in the article is recent scientific developments show that forests store massive amounts of carbon and continue to absorb carbon as they age. And let's see. Cutting part of the Hartford Conservation Plan is that by cutting it will allow other trees to grow, but that's a long-term gain. That's a plan for the long term. And right now, if you look at the crisis issue, climate crisis issue, we don't have the long term. We have to make decisions to respond to with the resources we have available. So a quote from an article that I sent to you all is, "Forests are our last best natural defense against global warming." I'm just going to conclude by saying, why log a forest when there's no financial reason? There's not really that much we're going to gain financially from it. And it's against the local state plans that guide us to increase tree coverage. Okay, and that one of the things that Hartford Conservation Commission wants to achieve is to teach people how to log, but the county forester is already available to go to private people and show them how to log. And I'm going to say one more thing is the Hartford Conservation Plan says, Hartford Conservation Commission's cutting plan says that we have to look at the income to remove valuable trees before their value declines. But I think, is that what we're looking at for the value of a tree, is what we can get to cut it and sell it and make money. I think there are many other ways that trees serve us, and I think we should be looking at that more. Thank you for your patience while myself and others share our concerns. There are many who are concerns that I'm hearing from, but we are in a small town, and I think it's hard for people to speak out when they know that it's against their friends. Someone who I've worked with a lot was involved with this plan. I would appreciate if you could at least wait until the residents get a chance to learn more. And I expect you'll be hearing from other residents. Myself and my partner, Fergus, who's probably going to make a comment, we started collecting some signatures, and we were only working for like maybe 2 days, an hour and a half total. And we have 10 signatures, so I was just going to submit this to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Laura. Appreciate your comments. I know this is an issue that has a lot of people who want to weigh in on. I want to note that we have tentatively scheduled for our May 31st meeting a town forest information item where we can discuss this more fully. It sounds like there is this other event on the 31st, and and maybe it would be wise to postpone our agenda item for until the meeting following, so that everyone can get all the information they want. But this will be an agenda item at some point. So everyone should keep that in mind, that we will have a full item devoted to this coming up.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry we scheduled it the same night as yours.
Oh,
I was limited. The quilting
worry
club
about it.
is at the Bugby other day, so
Yeah.
that threw me off.
Yeah, well, we can look, and if we have time to fit it on our next meeting, I think we can do that, because it sounds like it would be good for everyone to get all the information that they can
Thank you, Mike.
before we have our full discussion. So,
Thank you very
thank you
much.
very much, Laura.
Sure.
Yes, Lanny?
Mr. Simon,
Oh, yes.
do you have what you would consider, or your supporters have, an alternate cutting plan for the town forest that you might propose?
Well, the very first thing I would say is to not do the patch cut. And I would also look at part of the plan involves getting some hemlocks that are up on a ledge. So I'd like to have the chance to talk to the folks who wrote it and say, how essential is that? I know the plan was to use that for the lumber for the ramps, but if it's going to cause more trouble within the forest, it's one of these trade-offs. I love to see everything a town can do to help people who need ramps, who are low income, but I think we have to be more sensitive to our forests. Also, I guess I'm concerned about bringing in mechanical equipment that might expand the roadway, the trails to much larger. So I think having specialists I can listen to their report and I can ask them that kind of question, is if we were going to propose a alternative, what are some of the points they might say we can suggest to you all?
It would be interesting to see an alternative plan, if there is one, or if you have a forester that would have an alternative plan that they could recommend, just to see what the differences are. It's like anything, I'm sure you could have 5 different foresters and it would all come up with a different plan, but it would be interesting to see an alternative.
I'll try to start talking to some people and see if we can work towards that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hello?
Hello, my name is Fergus Marshall, and I live here in Wilder part-time. And
Great.
I want to say the race is on, from the national forest to the state forests to small town forests everywhere. The race is on to harvest trees for timber, cordwood, pulpwood, and wood chips for biomass. Northern temperate rainforests are being clear cut. The Amazon rainforest is being decimated and may soon become a greenhouse gas emitter. In the southern eastern United States, trees are being cut to produce wood pellets being used in huge biomass plants in the European Union. All of this is going on as the United Nations and thousands of scientists are telling us that we need to save our forests so they can absorb carbon dioxide. Trees offer us the best chance to turn around this climate catastrophe that is unfolding. Trees are the only known mechanism at scale that can remove carbon dioxide from our atmosphere. Sure, planting trees is a great idea. However, it takes decades for trees to grow to a size that will be able to absorb appreciable amounts of carbon. We must therefore save our trees and let them grow. By letting them grow, we allow our forests to be more richly diverse, and we retain that diversity. Disruption in the forest causes biodiversity loss and can take decades for it to recover. Please put on hold the cutting plan for the forest until more people can weigh in and decide it's best.
Thank you, Fergus.
And I thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Jeff?
I've come to beat a dead horse.
Don't worry about it.
Sorry. I have some pictures here of some of the big machines that they're going to use in the public forests.
Introduce
And I'd
yourself,
like to,
please.
my name is Jeff Arnold. I'm from Wilder. And before I start, I just want to pass out some pictures. One is a photograph in of the Barry Town Forest, which was logged and upset a lot of people. And another one is just an example of my mom's forest, which is out in Norwich, and which was pretty upsetting to me to see after it was logged. And these two pictures are the big equipment that will go into the forest, where right now there's 2-foot wide paths, and these will make 12-foot wide roads.
Okay. If you want to start landing and he can pass them down. Yeah.
So I'm addressing this issue as a private citizen, not as a member of the tree board. And I'm in opposition because of various reasons. One is the aesthetic reason that it's logging is a very destructive, damaging process. I mean, it yields furniture, which is nice, but in this case, of the 2,300 trees that are going to be logged, only 25% of them are going to end up staying in carbon form as building materials. All the rest is going up in smoke, basically as pulpwood or cordwood. So you're taking out all that because 50% of trees is carbon. So you're taking out all that carbon storage of these 10-inch trees, which is about 1.75 tons of metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent that has been removed, will be removed. And these are 80 to 100-year-old trees. There's a big push in the state, Vermont climate action plan stated they want old growth forests to be increased to 9% of the forests that exist in Vermont. So here we have a public forest where there's no financial pressures on it to sell the lumber because everybody in town is paying taxes, or there's no one person who is being hit by the property taxes. Whereas all the 80% of the other forested land, those people are facing property taxes and often would like to cut those forests and to attenuate those costs. So without that sort of financial pressure on it, so why can't we leave this forest, this public, as to become an old growth forest, which is necessary for the state to increase the amount of old growth forests. Old growth forests are kind of misunderstood. They're thought to be very sterile environments. And actually, they're very rich environments where you have different stages of growth. So you have all kinds of different wildlife. It's like what we had before the colonists came to Vermont and cut down everything. So you have lots of birds in old growth forests. You have lots of different kinds of mammals in old growth forests. Plus you have the old trees falling down and rotting and feeding the fungi and the insects and the earth. And actually the soil and everything becomes more resilient in an old growth forest than one that has been logged. So, and Ethan Tapper, who is the Chittenden County forester, which he has a pretty heavy job up there. He said in a recent talk that he gave, I mean, even though he's also for public logging, but he says this about old growth forests. He says that their late successional forests create more complex forests of different sizes and ages with an irregular canopy and different light conditions, and are very resilient to large scale disturbances and have much healthier soil ecologies. So those are the main reasons I'd like to see the public forest become an old growth forest. Thanks. And I hope you delay until more people hear what's going to happen up there, because making 12-foot wide roads where there are now paths and bike paths is going to be quite a glaring disaster. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.
I'm Earl Hatley. I'm from Quechee, and I didn't bring any data. I just wanted to speak about my experience. Everything has already been said data-wise that you need to know, I think, and you've seen the pictures, especially the pictures. I want to call your attention to what you're seeing in those pictures, because that's my experience that I want to talk about, is walking in that forest. It's kind of a mess. You heard Laura talk about the student forestry activity out there. There's logs and brush and stuff piled up all along the trails there. When I first walked it, I was appalled. This is a Hartford Town Forest, and I thought that meant for the town, for us to get out and walk and enjoy nature. And stumbling over all of that, it was a mess. And with this logging, I don't know but what it's just going to be more so. And I don't know that I want to make this a new addition to, my happy walks in the forest in the area, especially building roads through there and widening that. I don't understand the point of having a town forest if it's just going to be an industrial area where you want to harvest the wood. I don't get that, frankly. I would like to see a town forest, where we all drive up and we get out there and enjoy our walks and our nature. The fellow that just spoke, I think, said it very well about what we can do if we allow it to become old growth, primary succession. That's, I think, would be really great for the folks of Hartford to be able to see that and to be able to walk through that. As an Indigenous person, Abenaki, that's how we managed the forest prior to discovery. This was old growth, and we managed fires through there to keep the understory down, but also to manage the foods in the forest, because that was our permaculture, our food forest. And as a member as a member of the council of Resilient Hartford, we're building a food forest over at Clifford Park. Well, that's the same thing. That's, we're putting up trees and gills around the trees so that someday that will be a forest where you can come and eat. There'll be nut trees, fruit trees, and all these plants around them, at the base of them, fruit and herbs and other plants, a food forest, a permaculture. And that was what it looked like at the discovery throughout New England. And you can see that those who came here that discovered this, not the settlers, but the early discoverers, that's what they saw and wrote about. They called it a park, big, beautiful park, walking through the old growth. It was that way because it was managed that way. It was managed as a food forest. And if we allow this park to establish itself in the right way, that's what we could be walking through. And so I would like to see that personally. And I would implore you to not see it as a commodity where we just keep harvesting the trees and building roads through it and building up all this stack of brush under there, but actually make it something that we'd all want to walk through and enjoy and marvel at as we do that. Because right now I don't marvel at it. When I walk through it, I just look at destruction that's already there, and now we're talking about doing more. So I understand that I'm new here and I'm walking into this, but I'm just telling you what I'm seeing and describing it after walking through it. And I would implore you to think more seriously about that. What are you going to do with the wood that you harvested, and is it worth it? Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. Any other comment in the room? Do you have anyone on Zoom?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. All right, thanks, everybody.
My hand just went up.
Of course. Who do we want to bring over?
Mike, can you bring, Dave, can you bring Mike over?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
I can. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Mike Morris, Hartford, Vermont. Thank you. I was waiting for people to get done before I raised my hand. That's all.
Sure.
I have, the last meeting you had, there were some questions about hiring on a new public works director and everything else, but also during that session in the manager's report, there was mention about that they're still looking for people in public works, if there's several openings and they're still trying to fill them. I did a little research and I found a little disturbing that even on our Hartford website for employment and vacancies, we are not advertising for anybody in public works whatsoever. For the last year plus, I have been spoken to in condescending ways as to what a shortage of help we have, and we can't get things done and whatever, but yet we're not even using our own website to advertise for help. So can someone please, where else are we advertising somewhere else? We don't need to. What's going on, please?
Thank you, Mike. Tracy, do you have any comment on that? How the search is going, not only for the director, but for any other vacancies and where we're reaching out? Or if we
Yeah,
still need
so
to?
for our email, for our website, which is old, and we're doing training starting tomorrow on our new website, so staff can update it. If a staff member does put a close date on that posting, it will automatically drop off. And we need to remember manually to reopen that position. Unfortunately, our website and most municipal websites are not the best way to find people these days. Most people who are looking for a new job are on Indeed, LinkedIn, or other electronic databases like that. They're not even looking in the newspapers anymore, which is becoming a significant cost for us. So that's where we've really found our last few folks. And we're always willing and able and happy to hear from anybody who's interested in entry-level positions in water, wastewater, or highway equipment operator, because we do know that we have room for those individuals, and we're always, they're a little bit more of a high turnover position. So we are always happy to entertain someone who is qualified and interested in interviewing with us.
Okay. So it sounds like maybe postings on the town website need to be manually updated, but also that it seems the focus for recruiting is really on these sort of nationwide internet sites. Is that?
Definitely. And now that I know that that's dropped off, I can go ahead and shoot an email out and make sure that we reopen that on our website. We do have a couple that stay open until filled.
Yeah.
And that's the open-ended one that allows us to leave that up for the until we actually manually close it.
Okay. Lanny?
Yes. Anybody else have anything they want to? So my question is, are we still looking for staff at DPW, or are we fully staffed at DPW?
We are sufficiently staffed, but we have a couple of openings in each area for both water, wastewater, and we can always use a highway equipment operator or two, because we do know that we have some retirements coming.
So if we choose to use alternative sites for hiring, it would be a recommendation that we put on our website that listings for town of Hartford opportunities can be located at such and such, because if people still do look on the town of Hartford website for open positions, we should have a way to direct them to what is open. So
definitely, I think someone just inadvertently closed these positions rather than leaving them open until filled, which allows us to leave them kind of perpetually open if we get a good resume in.
yeah, but what I'm saying is that if we have job openings that we're looking to have filled on Indeed or Monster or some other site, we should have that listed on there as well, that all open positions can be viewed at such and such a link. That way, if there is something that does drop off by mistake off of the website, off of the town website, they can still find it on Indeed or Monster. See what I'm getting?
Let me add that to my email as well, and we'll figure out what the best way is.
That
to
way,
make sure that
no
we get
matter
that all
what,
together.
no matter if there's a slip or not, they'll still find that posting, so we can gain the qualified applicants that we need in the town of Hartford. So,
Thank you, Lanny. All right, so select board comments and announcements, I think is the next agenda item. I will start down with Kim and work back up.
Just briefly, I wanted to let anyone know that hasn't heard that the Hartford Community Coalition is hosting a series of what they're calling Safe and Healthy Hartford Community Conversations. Purpose of this conversation is to support the area residents of Hartford and their families to live a safe, best life in a supportive community. And there's a series of dates, including one that's tonight, but another one on Thursday, May 5th, Tuesday, May 10th, and Wednesday, May 11th.
That's good. Dan? Mary, anything?
The integrated forest management plan was part of the discussion with the resulting outcome that the commission voted last night unanimously to remove the patch cut from the timber harvest plan. More information about forest management and resilience through educational and hands-on programs need to be offered to the public as a pragmatic approach to understanding the commission's goals. A reminder that on May 5th, 5:30 to 7:30 at the Hurricane Forest will be one such opportunity to inform and educate all interested participants regarding timber harvesting. Green Up Day, Trails Day is upcoming, following on the heels of successful vernal pool walk and salamander teamwork that drew persons as young as 6 years of age and as elderly as 75.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Rocket, anything?
Yeah, a couple things. The first is a comment mostly for the citizens that come to reach out to select board and come to make comment. One thing that I've noticed as a new member of the select board is that we are inundated with a ton of information Our packets range from, at least in the few meetings I've been in so far, 80 pages to 150 pages. And I think that we all share a mutual interest in wanting to be as engaged and as responsive to the public as possible. For myself, I just wanted to make a personal request to anyone who does make public comment or send notes in. Brevity is really helpful in terms of, or at least just putting the conclusive point at the very front. I find that to be really helpful for me to understand what it is in terms of the context, because I want to make sure that I'm listening and hearing everyone well. So I just wanted to put that request out. The other is I was walking here to the meeting tonight, and just beautiful day, beautiful evening. And I was just reflecting, feeling immensely grateful to be serving here alongside you all, and also to represent this town. So it's just been an incredible honor so far. So I just want to comment and make sure my appreciation is known.
Thank you, Rockets. Much appreciated. Lanny, comments?
Yeah, one I think I'll hold off on. I do have one. I received a message over Facebook and that the Hartford Police Department announced the passing of former police officer Richard Riley. And Richard Riley was with the town for over 3 decades of service to the town. And it's the sadness that the police department announced this and make that known to the public. The other thing is we've received a lot of comments regarding on our email, all of you have, about subcommittees within our purview. And just like to remind all individuals that are associated with subcommittees, or committees or subcommittees of the town of Hartford Selectboard, that all the committees that are appointed have to be open to open meeting law, and they have to allow for citizen comment, and they have to allow for bipartisan, not much so bipartisan, but they have to allow for free speech. So there's issues involving discussion that is not cared for, but we have to listen to all sides of the discussion. That's part of what free speech is in America, and to deny opportunities to have free speech within a subcommittee, even though the subcommittee may not like to hear what you have to say, that committee has to be able to allow you to express yourself. So it's something that I read with a little dismay, that there's a potential for we're squelching some of the conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Lanny. I realized I passed right over Ally.
Yeah, she's gonna hand.
Okay, good.
Go ahead,
Ally?
Ally.
Hi, thanks everyone. I'm zooming in from Wisconsin, just traveling for work, so we'll be here over Zoom tonight. But just wanted to also give a shout out and thanks to the Ottaquiche School. This past Friday, myself and Select Board members Lanny Collins and Kim Souza, we got to attend the community fair that the school hosted along with their amazing 3rd graders. So we had some really great conversations with the 3rd graders about community, and they had great questions around the role of different organizations in the community. I was there just invited as a member of the select board, and I know Lanny was there for the Hartford Historical Society, and Kim was there on behalf of For Business Revolution. And we also had Hartford, the fire department and police department there, CATV, among other organizations. And it was just a really joyful, wonderful way to just hear from 3rd graders about how they're thinking about engaging in the community, and how they're already asking really great questions about how they can be engaged. So wanted to again share my appreciation for the folks at the Ottaquiche School and the 3rd graders for the invitation.
Thanks so much, Ally. And I just have a quick comment. Kim had mentioned how the Hartford Community Coalition is doing a number of meetings in each one of the villages, as well as on Zoom started yesterday over the next week or so. I went to the one last night, which kicked it off in West Hartford, because that's where I live. And I would encourage everyone and citizens to go. This meeting was fantastic. West Hartford, when you talk about health and safety, it's more like we're the forgotten town. We need a general store, things like that. And those are the issues that we discussed, because that is part of well-being and health in town. So I can imagine the discussions in other areas are going to branch off in different ways, but it was really a productive meeting. And I would encourage everybody to attend one of those, either in the village that they live or by Zoom. All right, so after that, we will move to appointments. So our first one is new appointments. We have 2 candidates for tree warden. So we're going to consider the application from Bob B. Littletree for the Hartford Tree Warden and the application from Jim Henderson to be the tree warden. Then we will go into executive session to discuss and come out and make our appointment. So if Bob is here in person or on Zoom, I would invite him to come up, and then same with Jim. Oh, right up to the podium and just identify yourself. That would be great.
I'm Bob Littletree.
Hi, Bob. Why don't you tell us about your interest in the tree warden position and what experience you have or what you think you might bring to it that would you'd like us to know?
Well, actually, I worked with Brad years ago when he was tree warden and we did the town preparedness for EAB. And I don't know, I read the statute, so I don't know a whole lot more about that, except it seems doable and I can do it with some help, some guidance from the tree board. I am a Vermont forest pest detector. I'm also a certified master gardener and so tree steward. So it's 3 different avenues. I'm the one that found EAB in Veterans Park.
Everyone knows what EAB is.
Emerald Dashboard.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, and I guess the big concern right now, since the Emerald Dashboard is just about everywhere in Vermont, including here, we know that when they kill a tree, the tree becomes brittle. So it's not like just any dead tree out there that's going to just keep aging and losing limbs and eventually falling apart. They can actually stay together and just fall apart all at once like toothpicks. And that's a serious problem because that's a hazard, whether it's on private land or right away. So I love trees.
Okay.
And that's about almost I've worked with not just the trees, but I think we try to stay abreast with all the different ailments that are coming in, hope wilt and other diseases that are coming in. It's not just Emerald Ash Borer. We have other problems on the horizon. Well, I will say, because you were talking about clear cutting earlier, clear cutting allows invasives to come in. And one of those is tree of heaven. And tree of heaven is the host to the spotted lanternfly. For some reason, they can mate and multiply better on that tree than any other tree. They're also, tree of heaven is also, it's like a weed. It's very hard to get rid of. Can't just cut it down. So got a little off the subject there, but that's the most I can really say about it. I'm interested in helping Hartford, the town of Hartford, as a tree board.
Questions? Okay.
think I know the answer to this because it's not in your application. You don't currently serve on the tree board currently, do you?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I do things like, they have a sale coming up
The arbor
this weekend, and Claire always asks me to kind of do a invasive table. I don't think we'll be there, so I've done that in past years. Education on these things is extremely important to the public, to legislators, knowing what we're up against. Landowners, what can they do? Can they knock their trees? You know, their trees, their ash trees. Oh, I love my ash tree. Can I knock it? Yes, you can. That's getting out that information at these kinds of things, and I do others as well. Yes.
Okay.
I have two questions. One for Lana and David. Can they hear him? Because he's not fully on mic. I just wanted to make sure the people on Zoom could hear him. But then the other is for you specifically, Mr. Littletree. The question I had was, not serving on the tree board now, why is it that you're applying to be the tree warden and not just on the tree board? What's the distinction there for you?
Oh, well, Chris, you asked for applications for tree warden. I work with the tree board. I mean, I'll do, work with them if they ask, but being on the tree board, I don't have any objection to it, but it doesn't seem to be something they need right now. They do need a tree warden because it's law that every town has a tree warden.
Thank you.
Lynn?
Sir, Mr. Littletree, what would you say your biggest asset that you could bring to this position as tree warden to the town of Hartford?
It's a hard one to answer because I'm not totally sure of all my responsibility as a tree warden. I mean, the statutes do spell it out, but I have some questions that I will be talking with the tree board about, that. I guess so. I think it's going to be more for me. It would be more of a learning as you go and working with the different organizations and different entities of the Hartford community, like the electric company and the road crews and that to deal with trees that are in trouble.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bob. We appreciate it.
All right.
Jim Henderson is either here or he's here. All right, if you could come up and introduce yourself, and you can tell us why you're interested in the position and what qualities you think you would bring to it.
Hi, I'm Jim Henderson. We own Henderson's Tree Service. I have 42 years experience in the tree industry. And I guess my major thoughts would be to first identify hazardous trees in the town, make people aware of that. And part of that would be because I've seen incidences where, we don't have money to take a tree down, but we have money to pay for a lawyer when the tree falls down and injures somebody. So it's more proactive. And then, so I get to drive around the Upper Valley all the time, and I get to see lots of properties and identify trees. And so I have kind of a daily view of the Upper Valley, so to speak. And I'm in the field working, which probably why I look like I'm ready to take a nap. But so then the other part of the program that I would be interested in is, so when the town select board or zoning board, all these new projects, they have to have a planting plan, but there's no long-term maintenance for any of these plants. They just get them on the ground and go, okay, we satisfy the town, we're off the hook, and then nothing happens. So it would be sort of maybe establishing a long-term maintenance plan for the town so that these trees that people invest money in can have longer life. Also planting trees, which I know is being done now by some other groups. Probably working with other towns that are Tree City USA that have arborists as staff members that have plans that they've already created to maybe use some of their knowledge that they've already created so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And just keeping the long-term view of trees in the town. So kind of having sometimes that's a succession plan with some of these street trees that are in narrow perimeters where they're between the road and the sidewalk, and they have limited root space to grow in. So they get to a point where the roots are pushing out the sidewalks, and then they basically, they have a time frame where, you know, they go to a point, they're like, okay, they're expired and they have to come out and put something else in there. So it's managing the whole town, not the town forest, but the, you know, street trees. We call it the urban forest because there's a lot more things that impact the trees in the urban forest. You know, you got a lot of compaction, you've got salt, you've got mechanical injury, that kind of thing. So it's just and so I've been doing this for 42 years. I'm getting tired physically, so I've never served the town, and part of this would be to help manage the trees in the town. I would probably go to, like Brad, go to Coop and get some insight from him and some things that he's done. And I think that's basically it.
So there's the one question is just because you do run Henderson's Tree Service is whether you've done work for the town in the past and whether that's something that's likely to happen again.
Yeah, we have done work for the town, but I believe that if you're the tree warden in a town, you have to get 3 bids, which wouldn't be from us. This is not a self-serving venture.
Yeah.
It's more like to use my experience to help guide the town through the future.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
Questions?
Well,
Kim?
So that kind of, I think, kind of answered my question. So what you're saying is any, like any recommendations you would make if you were the tree warden, Henderson's wouldn't even put in a bid for?
I believe that's from other tree wardens that I've talked to in other towns that they can't. The company that they work for is not allowed to, you know, be part of it. I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, it would seem unfair if I was here to try to increase the revenue of my company, because that's not really the goal. I mean, in my mind.
And just a quick follow-up, or not just a follow-up. And do you, are you knowledgeable as well about like the emerald ash borer, invasive species, any of that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know as much as I should. But, you know, we have resources. We're involved in, you know, International Society of Agriculture, TCIA, which is Tree Care International. So there's resources there, and then there's the network of arborists. So you can always, you know, call a friend or email or whatever for information, or maybe bring someone else in that might want to add some, you know, knowledge to the situation.
Thank you.
Mary.
Thank you, Mike. Yes. What is the bulk, or what has been the bulk of your work at Henderson Tree Service? Do you, you know, I'm sure you do a variety of things, but would you say the bulk was cutting trees, trimming trees, planting trees? Do you actually design landscapes?
I don't personally do that. My wife designs. So there's a fair amount of tree removal, which probably raises people's. So it's sort of like it's like having a bad tooth. What do? Do you leave it in your mouth and let infection build, or do you remove it and arrest the problem? So there's always that balancing point between why a tree is coming down, and there's usually a reason for it. It's usually people want light, or they want solar panels.
So you got, gaining something here, we're losing something there. There's always the balancing act of, of all of that. We do a lot of ornamental pruning. We do fertilizing. We have a plant healthcare division which treats for insects, diseases. We also do root excavations, where if you have a burrowing root, you excavate with air to expose the roots, find the root that's burrowing the other roots, and then arresting that. So that's not always guaranteed, but it works better on younger plants that have better chance.
Thank you.
Questions from the board? Ma'am?
Yes, Mr. Henderson. First off, I'm very pleased with my colleagues on the board addressing the issue of conflict of interest. Thank you very much for addressing that. I do see that as an issue that would be here if you were to take bids for the town of Hartford. The other question I guess I had for you is that what is, in your opinion, the biggest concern for the tree warden in Hartford right now, as far as what would be your number one goal as a tree warden appointed for the town?
One. I only get one.
The top of the list.
I think what's going to happen is it turns into satisfying a lot of people's needs. Like, there's so many people that have opinions about how things should be done. That might be the number one thing. It might be more like people negotiation aside from trees. So back to the trees, I would say, I would still go with safety. So what that means to me is, as I drive around, I see a tree hanging over the road. If you see a tree growing on an angle, it's probably growing towards the light. It may have, it's weighted in one way. It's may have a weak root system. It's hard to tell without further inspection, but so that would be number one. Number two would be.
I just asked for one.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay.
I actually do have a follow-up, and I should have asked Mr. Littleshoe as well, but just in one sentence, do you have an opinion about there was a lot of public comment earlier about the clear cut? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I'm not opposed or for it. I have kind of heard some comments that are kind of enlightening, especially with the native Iroquois or the Abenaki. So, that's we have, we cause a lot of problems for ourselves as a society because of our poor management of a lot of things. And so I haven't been up to the forest for a while. I mean, I know there's walking paths in there, and we went up and donated some time last year to cut some trees that were across the trail. So I would have to think more about that, but I see where, having a town forest, and it's like, what's the, who made these recommendations, and what is this plan? Is it a long range plan? Is it, we must have a.
So you would say that the jury's still out. You're still.
Yeah. So what's the purpose of what is being done? Is it to make the forest healthier? Is it to, make money, or is there reasons to why this has to be done now? And and there's always timber that, yes, if it stands too long and starts to decay, then there's no value. But there's no value in money, but there's value in the infrastructure of the forest. That it's not a money value. It's a, I don't know what the proper term is, but it's a different value.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you. This is my first experience speaking, so I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, you did great. Don't worry about it. Very helpful.
Mr. Chairman.
Lanny, yes.
I move that in accordance with Vermont's open meeting law, requirements. I moved that the select board enter into executive session to discuss the employment, appointment, or evaluation of a public officer, the provisions of Title I, Section 313(1)(3) of the Vermont Statutes.
Second.
Got a second from Kim. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So now we're gonna bring Ally in with us.
We're gonna call.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, so we're going into executive session. Well, we're back. We've got to come out of executive session, so I will take a motion. Rocket?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we leave executive session.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
There's seconds. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Nope. Thank you, Ally. Okay, I'm willing to entertain a motion involving the nomination of the tree warden, or we could start there.
Happy to, Mr. Chair, I move that the select board appoint James Henderson as Hartford's tree warden.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Daniel, second. All right, discussion. Lanny?
Yes, sir. I am not able to support this motion due to the following. I believe that we as a board in the town need to set up some clear expectations in terms of conflict interest around Mr. Henderson's business and the town. And I cannot support the motion as it currently stands.
Thank you, Lanny. Kim?
I would just like to respond saying that there was discussion about the limitations of conflict of interest. And I think because of the discussion we had during the interview where Mr. Henderson said that in any case that a recommendation was made by him as the tree warden, that his private business would not be a bidder in that process. We also discussed the process of the standard Hartford conflict of interest policy and purchasing policy that any entity would be held to the standard of would apply in any case, so that even if there were tree work to be done in the town that was brought forth through RFP from a department head or something of that nature, that potentially that wouldn't be a conflict of interest as long as the policy was complied with in its entirety.
Rocket?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment to Mr. Henderson that I understood what you were saying in terms of wanting to serve the community and offer your wisdom back. And in doing that, and in honoring the obvious conflict of interest, but like navigating that obvious conflict of interest, that you are effectively and voluntarily giving up the potential for some business. I think that's a really honorable thing. And I just want to thank you for your willingness to serve this community.
Kim, again?
Sorry to take more time. Also, I just wanted to ask that if Mr. Littletree would still consider consulting the tree board and the tree warden with your expertise on invasive species, especially the emerald ash borer. I think it would be incredibly invaluable, and perhaps we've been told there's a potential opportunity for deputy tree warden if that were something you'd be willing to consider. Both applications were incredibly appreciated. So just noting that as well.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Hey,
Okay, Lanny's opposed. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming in and talking to us. You were both great candidates. We encourage you, Mr. Littletree, especially to continue to work with the tree board. And, you know, if the tree warden wants a deputy, you know, we'd certainly ask him to look for you. So thanks, everybody, for a good discussion on this. It's been a long time, I believe, since we've had a tree warden, so I'm happy that we're able to move ahead. Okay, so we've got that done. We have a couple new appointments. We have 2 openings for HCOREI. We have an application from Joe Major and from Miriam Wood. My understanding is we'll allow them to talk if they're on Zoom or otherwise available. And that we can do one motion to appoint both members to HCOREI if that's what we want to do. Great. So maybe we'll start with Joe and then go to Miriam. Is that all right?
That's fine with me.
Okay, Joe, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I appreciate the current HCOREI board as well as this select board for thinking of me and as a part of that committee. It is important work, and it is work that I felt was unfinished when I was a liaison to that committee on the select board. In particular, the strategic plan. I think that that committee should be working with the town in the implementation of it. And there is a misconception that the strategic plan is strictly for minorities in this community, and it is not. It is for all residents in this community. And I will point to, and in particular, the public information officer that was put forward by HCOREI. There is a gap of information between the town and the residents of this community. That position would help to lessen that gap. That is only one thing that the strategic plan has put forward to implementation of this town. And so I want to work to not only get that done, but get other tenets of the strategic plan done with the town. So that's the work that HCOREI has been doing, and I would like to add my expertise, as it were, in helping to do that and navigate through the town. Thank you.
So, questions for Joe? Okay, Miriam, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
It's always a big shoes to fill speaking after Joe. But my name's Miriam. I'm a White River Junction resident. I've lived here for about 15 years, and before that I lived in other communities in the Upper Valley. It was actually a community member that told me about HCOREI. I had kind of expressed an interest in getting involved a little more in the community, and when I read the charge, it really resonated with me. I believe in all the work that it stands for, that it wants to do, that it's doing. And as you know, as a minority myself, we live in a multiracial, multicultural household. We've certainly dealt with racism in the community, and you know, it's difficult, and I want to do whatever I can to be of help. And I think I'm at a point in my life, my kids aren't little anymore, my work schedule's calmed down. I have that time to give the community that I perhaps didn't have, you know, 5 years ago.
Thank you. Any questions for Miriam?
I mean,
Okay.
I'd just like to, it's been great. Miriam has joined in a number of the meetings already as a community member before being sort of recommended from the committee as a applicant for joining the HCOREI anyway. And I think she's just an incredible, wonderful addition, which she would be if appointed to the committee.
That's
and we
great.
all know about Joe.
Yes, that's great. Very, very nice words for both. Lanny and then Rocket.
Go ahead, Rocket.
Oh, no, I was ready to make a motion.
Okay, yeah, question. So this is for both candidates. Do you see any of the role of the HCOREI to educate the general public in terms of, or to educate those that come to your meetings for the work of the HCOREI?
And I'll start, Miriam, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think that's one of its primary roles. I think we sometimes forget that the I is inclusive, and inclusive meaning that everyone, we want everyone to be a part of this. So education is absolutely a part of this. And I will go to the event that's going to happen. This is the shameless plug portion of our show. The event that's going to happen on June 18th with Juneteenth. That is all about education, and education of our history and what Hartford and Vermont is doing and forward thinking for this community. So I absolutely think this is an inclusive committee, and it's supposed to be that. And if we're not doing that, then we're failing in our charge.
Miriam?
I would echo what Joe says. Education's kind of the foundation. Without education, it's hard to wrap everything together.
Does this include for your own committee members?
Absolutely. And I mean, when I learned and I continue to learn constantly. And when we stop learning and we stop talking to each other, then we have failed in our charge and what we're supposed to do. When I was on the board, and the last thing that I said was that, you know, Allie is about half my age. And I have learned so much from her being in and just listening and being in our committees together. It helped me so much. And so absolutely, it is as much about listening in what we do than it is about teaching. And that's the communication part of what we're trying to do and put forward as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miriam was going to respond. Miriam, were you going to
Sorry,
respond?
I was just going to say, I think the education component, again, it never stops, and it doesn't matter whether you're an HCOREI member or not. For me personally, I have two children, age 17 and 11, and raising them just those years apart, we dealt with race really differently, both in the community. Part of it is their, you know, personalities, and also, you know, events that have transpired over the X amount of years nationwide. So nothing, it kind of remains the same. We're all learning all the time, and we're all, it doesn't stop.
Thank you very much for your responses.
And I apologize if I can add one more thing. I had mentioned Allie, but also our high school liaison, Molly, learning from her and learning what the younger generation and what they're bringing to the table and their thoughts and process, because they're going to have to carry this work forward. So learning from them as well. So that learning thing is a vital portion of what that work is supposed to be.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Rocket?
I actually have it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but if you have a response, then that's great too. You know, as many people in this room and in the community know, I have a lot of concern for socioeconomic differences. And Joe, when you talk about the I being about inclusivity, it being more than just a racial and more than a club for minorities, you know, myself included. And so this rhetorical question I have is, how do we challenge ourselves both through the charge of this committee and then as citizens of Hartford, a predominantly white town, to make sure that there are people who are not being voiced, having beyond ethnic diversity, but through socioeconomic diversity, having their voice, their advocacy, and bridging those gaps. So I don't have an answer for it. It's not there's certainly no easy solution, but I trust that you both will keep this in mind in the committee and under consideration.
And again, there isn't a straight answer to that, but I think that's why you have committees like HCOREI to help citizens address some of those issues and to represent that.
I heard a statistic from a Hartford High teacher, and I don't know how accurate it is, but something about 14 students have dropped out this year. And my bet is that they are not necessarily ethnic minorities, but they are nonetheless probably coming from families where they are not being served or given the opportunity to succeed in school. So things like that are way heavy on my mind. And I would love to see any efforts that we can make through HCOREI and through the select board and just as citizens of Hartford, looking out for lack of a more graceful phrase, you know, poor white people in town too. So I just want to make sure that that's in our minds.
I think one of the things that's important with this work is it goes to the old cliche, a rising tide lifts all boats. And so that the work that we do, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, will help all citizens of Hartford, not just minorities. And that's kind of the key. Now, are there some things that we have to focus on? Absolutely. But I think if we do those things, everyone benefits from it.
Absolutely. And I don't say any of this to diminish the discrimination or the ignorance or the mistreatment that minorities receive, because, you know, as all the three of us know, it's constant. So it's not to diminish that in any way, but also just to hold in our hearts that there are more people who are often not seen, who do represent a big portion of our population here in town, that I think we need to be careful and kind to hold in our hearts as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Rocket. I'm willing to entertain a motion for some more discussion.
I'll move that we appoint Joe Major, excuse me, and Miriam Wood to the Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion for a 2-year term beginning May 3rd, 2022 and ending May 2nd, 2024.
I'll second that motion.
We got a second from Lanny. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, unanimous. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm going back to the beach.
Enjoy.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
All right, so after that, we will go. We've got a few reappointments to consider. I don't know if any of these individuals are here. We'll see, but we're going to consider the reappointment of X Flynn, Jeff Brand, and Bob Merrill to the governing board of the East Central Vermont Telecommunications District. The reappointment of Michael Vanassi to the Hartford Parks and Rec Committee, and the reappointment of Bethany Fleischman to the Advanced Transit Board. Do we have any discussions on any of these?
Are any of the candidates on Zoom?
Yeah, or anyone here? Is anyone here?
I don't think so. Let's see if I remember already. No, I don't think so. Is there a term period for the EC fiber or the East Central Vermont Telecoms?
There does not appear to be a term.
Life appointment.
I mean, I know we did the same trio.
the paper, we do the process. I don't know.
So Lana's saying is they send us the paper and we do this on a regular basis. There's never been anyone who wants to, and that is EC fiber, and it's wanted to be this.
Move it as is, do you think?
It's what we've always done. I'm happy to reach out and ask them maybe what the term limits are in the future.
So we have done this before, but has there ever been like a term on it?
So why are they here now?
Is it annual?
Because I do feel like I've done this a few times too.
It's gotta be a term limit. You can't do an appointment without a term limit. It's just foolish.
Well, there's obviously some kind of term on it because this is a reappointment.
Right.
So we just
It's
got to
just
figure out what it is and whether it says it.
But also, if I may, the same, like I know with, for example, the advanced transit one,
It says, say appointment annually on or before the last Monday in April, commencing in the year following.
where did you see, that's on the EC fiber one, on the.
That's on a resolution to appoint representatives to the governing board of the East Central Vermont Telecommunications District.
Yeah, so that looks like a state law annually.
Page 11 of the
on or
PDF.
before the last Monday in April.
These are also, sorry, Jim. May I?
Yeah,
Like,
of course, yeah.
I had a conversation with Bethany Fleischman the other day, and these are not town committees. They are literally like, they are their own standing, like the Advanced Transit one is the Advanced Transit Board of Directors. And somehow like their charge has something to do with the fact that, or their constitution is that some members are appointed by the select board. So it's not really like the Advanced Transit Board is not a town committee.
Yeah.
It's their own board of directors, but that the select board appoints a member to them. That was how she described it to me.
Gotcha.
In the co-op.
It also says under 3063 term, unless replaced in the manner provided in section 3059 of this chapter, a representative on the governing board shall hold office until his or her successor is duly appointed.
Yeah, so I think we can move them as they are in my opinion.
Yep. It's good to me. Anyone want to make a motion or any more discussion?
So I just want to make clear what the motion you're proposing is.
Well, it's the motion to appoint these individuals to the governing board of the East Central Vermont Telecommunications District, whose terms of the appointment and everything else are set by state law.
Okay, so where the, okay.
Should we do this all as a single motion or as three different?
Well, I think we can do all three in this one. I think we can do this first appointment with all three people as one motion, and then we'll take the separate motions for the next, for F and G on the appointments or reappointments. Dan,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint FX Glenn, Jeff Brand, and Bob Merrill to the governing board of the East Central Vermont Telecommunications District.
okay.
Second.
Second from Kim, discussion from anybody? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so now we'll consider the reappointment of Michael Vanas. So someone's got to tell me how to.
Vanessa, I believe. Vanessa, I think,
Vanessa.
isn't it Vanessa?
Vanessa. All right, I'm sorry, Michael, if you're listening. Consider the reappointment of Michael Vanessa to the Hartford Parks and Rec Commission. Willing to have a discussion or entertain a motion on that one.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Lanny.
Make motion, please.
Okay.
Consider the reappointment of Michael Vanessa, whoever you want. Sorry, Michael, to the Hartford Parks and Recreation Commission for a 3-year term beginning May 3rd, 2022 and ending May 2, 2025.
Second.
Kim will second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, unanimous. And then we have one final reappointment of Bethany Fleischman. Kim.
Chair, I move the select board reappoint Bethany Fleischman to the Advanced Transit Board for a 3-year term beginning May 3rd, 2022 and ending May 2nd, 2025.
I second that
We have a
motion.
second from Mary. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Wonderful. All right, so that takes care of the reappointments. We have the town manager's report scheduled, and we also originally had a break scheduled for about 15 minutes from now. So I'm just wondering, taking the temp here, do people want to break for 5 or so minutes?
Or just do 10 minutes report.
Yeah, you want to hear maybe we'll do the town manager's report and see where we're at after that. Okay, thank you. Tracy.
Fair enough. All right, everybody. Mike asked that I focus my report this time on recruitment and retention at the Hartford Police Department. I thought that was a great idea, Mike. You'll see in my town manager's report, I opened this up that police recruitment and retention is a nationwide problem that's been ongoing for at least a decade. I came down from the county level to the state level, or from the county level to the local level about 10 years ago, and it was still already a long-standing issue. So I have to dig into some folks with more gray hair and wrinkles than me, but I would not be remiss in saying that this is about a 20-year-long problem for a variety of municipalities of all shapes and sizes. So I wanted to provide a little context. You'll notice that the report from the International Association of Chiefs of Police is the firm that's doing our hiring process for our police chief. And, you know, even just as little as 3 years ago, respondents were reporting having difficult recruiting qualified applicants, and that, you know, they were saying in 2019 that recruiting was more difficult in 2019 than 2014. So you can see where that longevity comes from. And again, you know, 2009, the Office of Community Oriented Policing Services reported similar findings. So we're not alone, not even in Vermont and not even in the modern era, that these are causes for concerns. One of the things that we want to keep in mind is that we feel very strongly that all recruitment needs to have a rigorous evaluation of applicants, and we are known for having some of the region's best officers. So we don't want to reduce our criteria. We want to remain rigorous in our evaluation. When people come to us and they're interested in joining the Hartford Police Department, across the board, I can tell you that our police officers not only hold themselves, but to each other with high standards of integrity, respect, and professionalism. I let them all know that I have worked in a number of police departments and evaluated a number of police departments. I was and still remain completely impressed with the Hartford Police Department and how they perform their day-to-day work, how they treat each other, how they treat residents and other community stakeholders, and their high regard for ongoing training and ongoing education. So before somebody becomes a fully functioning member of our police department, if you are a fresh recruit, you are not a lateral transfer from another department, you get to go to a police academy, which is 16 to 18 weeks. One of the issues that we are having is that the state of Vermont runs the police academy. We do not run our own police academy. We don't have enough recruits to do that, unlike large municipalities, which means we have a stopgap that's out of our control. During COVID, they slowed down police academies. They didn't hold one actually in the middle of COVID. And that meant that us, along with every other municipality, the state police and all the sheriff's offices were constrained in our hiring. So we couldn't get people through the police academy. It's something that our state representatives probably hear me speak about too often, but we need more flexibility in that. We need more police academies. We need more opportunities to get people who are interested in the career through that educational and shoes on the ground learning experience. Then they come back to us and they do 16 weeks of field training. If they're a lateral transfer, so they're certified in another state, or they're coming from another municipality in Vermont, they still do that 16 weeks of field training. So they go with one of our more experienced officers and they get continuing education and on-the-job training for how we feel we conduct ourselves in the community. We also do ongoing training in core policing skills that's commonly called post training. And it is a standard set of education across the community where if you do post training, you have a baseline foundation of the work that's getting done. But you'll see in the SIG ACTS report, we had 2 officers complete training to become RAD instructors. So that's a self-defense program. We have other staff who are moving into being able to provide active shooter training. We'll be rolling that out for staffs coming up soon, and other defensive driving and training skills. So we allow officers to take on additional skills that help them not only become better police officers, but also provide for a community outlet. I know that the 2 officers who were in training for RAD, they are very interested in holding some open sessions for residents and other community stakeholders and staff members to understand that self-defense. So thank you so much to the staff for pulling their hiring and leaving data for me for the last 5 years, 4.5, right? Because we're only about halfway through 2022. And when I looked at this, knowing what I know about recruitment and retention across the country, it's really following the same national trend. It's hard to recruit strong candidates who can excel. People come and go. People realize that policing is not for them. And like many communities, we've had COVID. People are choosing to leave and be closer to their families. They're reevaluating their career choices. They're getting married and realizing that policing doesn't fit in with the vision for their family. Those are all okay. That's what happens. The good news is that our age of officers is relatively young, and we have a strong cohort of young officers. So many other municipalities are also dealing with what you would call the silver tsunami. So they have a huge number of staff members that are actually currently eligible to retire with a very lovely municipal retirement program. And they're worried about people putting in their retirement papers en masse in the next couple of years. Knock on wood, while we do need to be aware of retention, retirement is not necessarily something that we are nervous about in the police department. So thank you for everybody that has a little less gray in their hair down there. Overall, you'll see, for those of you who saw my report, we had some dips and ups and downs in recruitment and hiring. I love what they're doing right now. Many, many thanks to Acting Lieutenant Connie Kelly. She has a very high standard of integrity in the people that she brings through. But when she does bring them through and gets them into the academy, she helps guide them along because it is a little bit of a difficult process for them. One of the things that we are doing and that a lot of departments are doing is we're adopting more modern recruitment strategies. and also opening up kind of who we recruit. My one example is we allow visible tattoos in many cases. That's a different change that's come through in the last 4 to 5 years. We again have caveats about body art in general, but we're not going to similarly dismiss someone if they have a visible tattoo. We're going to continue that recruitment process with them. Definitely something that even 10 years ago was very nouveau and strange. Most departments do that now. We have recruitment bonuses that makes us both comparable to Hanover and Lebanon. Lebanon started it. We still give them a little bit of flack, but we're staying at pace with Hanover and Lebanon, who are 2 of our larger competitors. And we offer educational incentives, training promotions, promotional opportunities, and we are also really known for having sufficient high quality equipment. We don't leave people with third-hand pants, with old shoes. Our bulletproof vests and our body armor are up to date, well-fitting and easier to work with. We have body cameras that are lightweight and are easier to wear because, as I'm sure you're all aware, all of that equipment does get kind of heavy. We are also finalizing our recruitment video and materials. There's going to be short videos and long videos, and we are following the footsteps of a lot of our other colleagues out there, and we're going to be using Instagram, possibly even TikTok and Indeed to reach different groups of people. We know that the old paper application and reading a post in the newspaper for hiring, that is dead. And it's not coming back. So we might as well find where the people are and talk to them. I want to do a shout out to our 3 recruits. We technically hired all 3 of them in 2022. They are doing so very well in the police academy, which is currently happening right now. One of our recruits was selected as class president by their peers, which is a very high honor. There's one person that's selected as class president for the entirety of the police academy. And that we've heard that we have the largest number of individuals in the current academy withstanding the Vermont State Police. So we have 3 in there, and we're right behind the Vermont State Police in the number of high quality candidates that we have in there. We have 1 officer in field training. And once we get these recruits up and into field training, our patrol staff will be at 14, which is 2 less than patrol staffing. We are a little understaffed in detectives. That's an internal transfer. We don't usually just recruit new staff to go into our detectives. They're under by 3, but it is a promotional opportunity that comes with a lot of work. So as the command staff identifies officers who they think would be a good fit in detectives, they'll often do a little bit of time over there, see if it's a good fit for them, and then get transferred over to detectives. Ideally, if we had 5 fantastic officers that were just standing outside waiting to join us, we'd take them all on. Heck, if we had 8, we'd find the money for them. But overall, we're doing okay. We're doing a lot better than a lot of our other Vermont small towns. Yes, we're focusing on recruitment. We also need to focus on retention. We have high quality officers. We need to keep them because being recruited, being headhunted, that is a thing. So what we are doing is I meet regularly with the director and our 2 acting lieutenants about retention opportunities. We are aware that salary changes are constrained by the town budget and by their current collective bargaining agreement. But we are looking for other ways to financially recognize our staff who've provided years of service. We know that accolades are great. We know that for a lot of people, prices have gone up. We can't necessarily be fully competitive with salaries. So we like to be able to put some money where our mouths are. We're exploring opportunities to provide retention bonuses based on years of service. Payable over time. So for example, our recruitment bonuses require that you don't get that full amount until you meet certain timeline constraints. If you leave before that, we actually take that money back. We would be looking for those same caveats for a retention bonus. And that is an item that we can discuss later as a use of ARPA funds that we'll be bringing forth in a later May meeting. But we continue to look to see where we can add other financial incentives. One of the questions that I know comes up is about mutual aid. We give and receive mutual aid really, really frequently, mostly from Lebanon and Norwich, as they are physically our closest community partners. We have mutual aid agreements with both, but it's really a we're all in this together. Can you help out sort of thing? You will often see both police and fire, our staff over there helping out, their staff over here coming out. Anytime it's a big event, you will see our mutual aid partners coming to support us to make sure that's what's being happening is what we need. The Windsor County Sheriff's Office does also give and use mutual aid during certain parts of the year. Their workflow is very different from ours because they are a county office. And in 2022, unfortunately, the Vermont State Police, who also has severe staffing shortages, has let everyone know that they can only provide limited backup. For example, in Springfield, they are no longer able to provide backup to Springfield because they also do not have the staff to help out municipalities. Definitely a moment of we're all in this together and we're not alone. We don't require staffing for special events, and we do offer those shifts to outside agencies. So we prioritize patrol and we prioritize our policing. So for example, if you are at the Covered Bridges 5K or the Quechee Balloon Festival, you may see a Windsor County Sheriff's officer. You might see a Norwich officer. We'll open up those spaces to our community partners to make sure that our staff gets the rest that they need. We offer the overtime. We don't require anybody to take it. If you've done 20 hours and you need to be on patrol, we'd rather have you be on patrol than directing traffic at a special event. And I just, my report closes thanking the Hartford Police Department staff for their continued dedication to service. Many of these ideas have come directly from staff. They're the ones who are doing the day-to-day work, who speak to their colleagues in other municipalities, and they bring those forward. They've also been very vocal about maintaining high standards for their staff. They do not want us to lower our criteria. They want us to take the best of the best and the people who are committed to what Hartford policing means. And I really, really appreciate that. We also continue to think outside the box. 2 of our new recruits came from the U.S. Postal Service. So we are always looking for people who might have a non-traditional movement up and through the policing thing. I always share that my favorite dispatcher from the city of Berkeley came from a very busy Starbucks. And she said that if she could manage that, she could manage anybody's crisis because she was used to dealing with people who have a very heightened sense of emotion in that moment. So we continue to look for those opportunities to bring people into our staff. I'm happy to entertain questions. I know we also have SIGAC, so if there's anything in there that you would like to know about, happy to either discuss or bring it back to the staff.
Questions, comments? Manny?
Anybody down there?
I emailed mine, I'm good.
So one question I guess I have, I think I've asked this in the past, is for going on at least 2 years now, we've not had a staff appreciation banquet whatsoever. So where are those funds that are currently in staff that were designated for staff appreciation? The first year for 2020, I believe the board and the interim town manager at the time, I think there was a joint decision, released checks. So they took that funding and divided amongst all of the staff and added that to a paycheck. Last year, we thought we were going to be able to do the event, and then Omicron happened, and we heard from the staff that the checks were generally well received, but also weren't really knowing if they were feeling like a party. People were feeling a little apprehensive about being in a room together. And so we are holding on to those funds for an outdoor party this summer. And we will also have the FY22 funds. We're not going to put them somewhere else. We have to spend them on staff appreciation. I deeply believe that we spend them on staff appreciation. If that means we just have a really big party after a couple of years of not being together, then that's a great option for the staff as well. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to thank you, Tracy, for pulling that together. And one thing that really sort of interested me was thinking about retention or maybe other bonuses as a use of like ARPA funds, like as an infrastructure, like building up the actual like human infrastructure, being able to recruit people or pay bonuses to keep them there. So a lot of the times I just think of infrastructure as like, oh, we're going to build a bridge or something, but it's interesting to think about whether that's a possible use for some of those funds is actual investment in the people who work for the town. So thank you very much for that presentation. Rocket.
Tracy, I just wanted to double check on the police chief search. We're still sort of on track with that. Everything's.
The advisory group is meeting on Friday to go over the draft community profile, candidate profile. Thank you, Kim. I was like, community is not the right word, but I can't think of the right word right now. And my goal is to have that back to our contractors by the end of day on Friday. Once they do that, they open the recruiting, and the recruiting will, let's use the word percolate, for 3 weeks.
Great. So we're still sort of looking at midsummer to hopefully have.
Yeah, it's going to move faster and faster.
Amazing. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. So we will move on to board reports, motions, and ordinances, or we will take a break. Do you have any? Break? Okay. Lenny was taking a break. Why don't we take a break and come back at 5 after the hour?
Oh my gosh.
We are back in session from our break, and we're going to do Q3 financials with Gail. Thank you, Gail.
Good evening, everybody. Gail Ostrov, Finance Director for the town of Hartford, and we're going to talk about the third quarter financials, which ends on March 31st of 2022. And on my presentation here, you will have three options that we've talked about before. You have the green light, which means we have no concerns. You have the yellow light, meaning that we're slightly outside of our target. And then we have the red light, which means we need to talk. Which fortunately, in this presentation that I'm giving to you, we don't have any red lights. So that's a great thing. Before I start, though, I didn't receive any initial questions. Are there any overall questions that you would like to talk about, or have your questions been answered, or would you like to do it as we go along?
So preference, I'd say if we have questions going along, we can.
Yeah, I do have a question, but I'll ask you.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to start with the general fund. Our glide path for 3/31/2022, which is the third quarter of our fiscal year, is 75%. That means as of March 31st, we would like to have spent 75% of our expenditures or less. And for the FY22 budget, our annual budget is $17,640,520. Year to date, we've executed $11,872,713, which is equals to 67%. I mentioned that the balance that we have ensures that we have the adequate balance to encumber $408,233, which was part of our FY23 budget process. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we're in good shape for that. And in comparison to FY21, the budget was $17,609,829. And as of last year at the same time, we had executed $11,810,296, which also was 67%. So a green light there, no concerns. As far as revenue goes, the revenue for FY22 for the annual is $17,640,520. And we are at 94%, which is $16,638,322. In comparison to FY21, the budget was $17,609,829. The year to date last year was $19,562,970, which was 111%. The difference in that is the bond proceeds for the pool. We do mail the tax bills out once a year. They will go out in July, and then they're due 30 days later, which is in August. We do have two installments, one in August and one in February, which is voted on by the voters and approved during town meeting.
Can I jump in quickly? So the pool bond was included in the 21 revenues?
That's correct.
Because it was deposited in?
That's when you receive the revenue.
Okay.
Correct.
And then it's still.
Because
okay.
Yep, the town operates on accrual accounting, not cash basis.
Gotcha.
Yep. Any questions on that before I move on to the delinquent taxes? So delinquent taxes as of 3/31/2022 was 1.3 million. As of 3/31/2021, it was 1.1 million. And as of 3/31/2020, it was 1 million. Again, I mentioned this when I was here before. We turned 1.7 million delinquent in 2022 and 2021. And that I was here probably, I think, in February that we talked. So since then, when it turned delinquent at 1.7 million, we are down to 1.3 million. So we're going down a little bit every month. Part of that I feel very proud to talk about, which I did before, is that the state of Vermont has many different programs to help property owners, and that includes residents who own property as well as residents. And they have assistance available, whether for your property taxes, electric, water and sewer. And we've taken great pride in making sure that we are making our residents aware of that when either they call or they come in. And we do it in a very polite manner, just letting them know. We understand that individuals are struggling and still trying to recover from the COVID situation. And we've had many residents, again, whether they actually own a property or they are renters, that are taking advantage of these programs. And it's been nice to see for them to receive that relief, because many of them we see on a regular basis, and we kind of get to know them a little bit more than other people that only come in twice a year. So I am happy and proud that we are able to do that. And for those of you that are helping promote it, I thank you for doing that.
So question about delinquent taxes. I see a trend here, how our delinquent taxes are increasing. And I understand that we carry over that number. And I'm not sure if it's attributed to that. And the reason I ask is that, do you have any numbers that would indicate to us how many or what the percentage of delinquent taxes is just for the period of 21 or 20, 21 and 22 that were still due from taxpayers, to understand that people are not paying, I don't want not paying, but just understand the portion that's still due for this year.
Sure, we do have a schedule that we maintain for that. I don't currently have it here in front of me, but it's certainly something that I could email very easily tomorrow, because we do track it on an annual basis. And it goes all the way back, to 2009, 2010. We have it broken down by what the taxes are and the penalties and interest is. So that's something that I could easily email. I just do not have it here in front of me.
Can you make a note? I'd be interested to understand what that breakdown is. The other question I guess I would have is, would this number, understanding that we have payment plans and we have help from the state to take care of this tax, I guess you call it tax debt to people. I don't know how to phrase it. Do you see a way to not have this trend? I mean, just if you were to do a projection on this, 10 years out, we're looking at, well, we're talking $200,000 every year for delinquent taxes. So that's a significant amount of money down the road. Is there any tools that we can have that would help to alleviate some of that?
So I think the goal as a finance director is I'm always looking that we don't carry more than $1 million for delinquent taxes. And prior to COVID, we were hovering right around that without any problem at all. When we went from 2020 to 2021, we only jumped about 100,000, which is not very much in the grand scheme of things. If you're looking at our total budget of 17 million plus, going up $100,000 in delinquent taxes is not, for me as a finance director, I think it's immaterial based on what the community in the whole nation has gone through. And where we're at right now, even from in February when we were at 1.7 million, we've already come down 400,000. So if we continue on this trend that we're at, we're going to be very close to the 1.1 million where we were at delinquent last year. I haven't seen a trend where prior to COVID, because I think we all understand that was, a special situation. I don't see any other trends that would make us continually grow at a rate that I would be concerned about as a finance director. I don't think that we have any more tools that we could offer to our residents to help them with their delinquent taxes. Ultimately, it comes back to you as the select board when you're setting the tax rate and setting what the budget is to determine what you feel that the community can afford to pay for.
I guess that's where it would be interesting to me to see the percentage of the actual tax base that's delinquent, because as the tax rate grows, as the budget grows every year, is the percentage delinquent taxes really, is it consistent, you know? That would be an interesting trend for me to understand. And if that's growing, that's the area to be concerned. But the fact that, as you say, this small amount of delinquent taxes at this point, you know, is not of a concern. But if that trend, you know, the percentage was 20% this year, 25% the next year, and 27%, if that trend grows, that would be something I would think would be a concern. So that's why it'd be interesting to get those numbers back.
Right. So a good tool for everybody to use is the town report. The town report has all of the the town report has all of the projected revenues that are in it. It also lists all of the delinquent taxes, reminding everybody that when the budget's approved, we actually don't set the tax rate until July, which is after the budget is approved. And many of those numbers are subject to what the state provides to us, and we have to go by then. It also is subject to the grand list. So a good tool to start with right off, it would be is the town report, because it does provide all of that information. I can certainly send you the delinquent tax by the year, and I could go back through the town reports and dig up the approved budget amounts, and then, you know, do a simple Excel spreadsheet if that was necessary, you know, to give you the percentage. It's that trend, I think, is the one that's more concerning to me, to make sure that we're still keeping the cost of living within town of Hartford within check.
Just a quick question. Is there any correlation? It doesn't even have to be these 3 years between the delinquent taxes and population at all? Population rising, population falling? Do you know at all? I mean, I don't know if that's any kind of data that you'd keep track of, but.
I personally don't keep track of that, and I would not feel comfortable giving you an educated guess.
Sure,
You know,
sure.
I think everybody knows in the past couple of years, the real estate market has gone wild. And the population of individuals who maybe had a second home or wanted to have a primary home, etc., has grown a lot. And during my meetings, actually, I just had a meeting with the town clerk yesterday about their financials, and seeing the trend of where we're at, because their revenues have been really, really high, much higher than what they had anticipated. But that comes from the real estate market, and we're starting to see it. You know, it's coming down off from that huge mountain that it was on. But to answer your question, Mary, I'm not educated or have that information to be able to give you that correlation.
Just be interesting, you know, but I didn't think that would be data that you'd be.
Yeah, no, it's not something that I would normally carry. Okay. So we're gonna move on to the local option tax. This is something that I keep in here for many different reasons, but we'll see. As of March 31st, we had a balance of $395,338 for with that balance that we have sufficient funding to complete the FY22 voter approved for the simulcast system lease. It also is sufficient balance to cover the voter approved $119,700 for FY23 for the cemeteries, as well as the $200,000 for FY23 voter approved towards the ambulance purchase. Should we not receive one more dollar for any sort of local option tax, as you can see, we have sufficient funding that would leave us a balance of $50,513. Obviously, we believe that, you know, we will continue to receive local option tax as our local businesses continue. However, that's just a reassurance for all of you and the voters that we do have sufficient funding to meet the needs that we as the town have committed to.
That's great.
Okay, so moving on to the American Recovery Funds, I've been hearing a lot of chatter about that. So this is a new addition, a new slide to my presentation that I have. As of March 31st, we had a balance of 1.4 million and some change. That was brought to the town in two different deposits as noted, one on August 20th and one on September 10th, which total 1.4 million to 28,000. We've gained $2,027 in interest, which brings us to the balance of $1.430,000. The town manager and I completed the first annual report that we needed to complete by the end of April. We completed it timely. A couple of notes on here. We strongly recommend, and so does the entity that provides the opera funds. We strongly recommend that you have community forums. You want to reach out to your community, whether it's in a town hall forum or a board meeting, whatever it may be, to get our community involved in what we have for recommendations and what you would like to do with that money. That is also what the town manager and I put on our annual report, is one of the reasons why we have not given specific projections or projects, because the town would like to reach out to community members. One final note on here, because the town manager and I are ultimately responsible for doing the reporting and the compliance of the use of these funds. I strongly recommend that we are at least involved in the conversations. You as the board have the ultimate decision on what you do with the money. But it's very important that the town manager and I have those discussions with you to make sure that you're meeting compliance that goes along with it. Don't want to have any non-compliance items, and they may not always be the best discussions, because everybody has, we're managing our priorities and what's important. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're using those funds that are within compliance. So if I can just make that plea to each of you on behalf of the town manager and I, as we move forward, before any final decision is made, let's make sure that all of our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think I'm personally very interested to hear what the public has to say, and definitely the two of you, what guidance you can give us as well. I'm concerned about the interest rate, especially with CPI being over 8% right now. Is interest going to eat our lunch on this? And should we buy a bunch of Bitcoin and sit on it?
That's interesting.
No, I know. So that's the interest we're gaining, but the cash it's otherwise sitting as cash somewhere and depreciating in value because of inflation. So I'm just wondering if that's a discussion, where that discussion would be. I was joking about the Bitcoin, but at least putting it in some sort of asset that would keep pace with inflation, just as stewards of that. I don't know.
So the town treasurer would be in charge of the investing of the funds. And we recently, I shouldn't say recently, it's been probably 4 years, we switched to Mascoma Bank, and their products that they offer there town-wide has been very fruitful for the town as far as interest-wise goes. If the select board would be interested in looking at other investments for those specific funds, I would ask that you bring the current town treasurer in, because he would be the individual that would be able to make those changes for you. The town manager and I are not in a position to make those decisions.
Do you have an opinion about that though? When you can share?
I always have an opinion.
Yeah, right.
However, I do not have opinion right at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Are we allowed to do anything with the funds, given that they're allocated to us from the feds, or do they just say we have to sit on them and we either spend them in a way they allow or we lose them? Like, could we go and invest in something with this?
There are specific guidelines that you need to utilize those funds for. You can't hold them for
Indefinitely.
indefinitely.
Yeah, no,
There are
no,
certain-
but could you put it into a higher yielding, like
You
investment
certainly-
vehicle or not? You could.
You certainly could take
Okay.
them and move them, according to compliance, you certainly could move them to a different institution that would provide you a greater return. As
we
long as you have the immediate, you want to make sure that you're not limiting your access to that
Yeah,
funding
Of course.
as well. And you also do not want to put it in a fund that would require you to pay a fee to remove that fund, remove your funding.
Other question, do we expect an allocation of infrastructure funds through the legislature to the town? And if so, is that going to go into like a separate account? Or do we expect that at any time coming up?
The infrastructure money is going to be project-based from the town, not this direct money that
Okay.
we've gotten from ARPA. So what we're doing in that case is we are watching for funds that we have compliant projects with.
Okay.
So a couple of them, just to riff on this, is combined sewer outflows versus building a new rural water system. So the state is piecemealing together all of the different projects that they want to use the infrastructure money for. And then cities and towns are able to apply to those projects that they have a qualifying project for. So it's not going to just be cash.
Okay. Danny?
Gail, and Tracy, I suppose. I understand that the goalpost of the rules on the ARPA funds have kept changing. So my question is, how far in advance do municipalities know that ARPA funds are going to change again? Because I'm concerned about us getting into an area that we should spend this money because right now we have the ability to spend this money on X project. Down the road, they may take that project away. Are they just expanding them or they?
So, when we talked, like last summer, the interim final rule was out, and that's when they had those 4 different broad categories that they said that we could spend the money on. In that time, the final rule has come down, and that is the final rule. And that has allowed municipalities to book up to $10 million as lost revenue without necessarily having to account for each dollar to dollar as a lost revenue. So when that interim rule came out, what happened is the Department of Treasury got feedback from not only municipalities, but people like VLCT who advocate for us on a higher level. And they heard that was not really necessarily where smaller municipalities like us needed to put the funding, and we needed more flexibility. So that way, when that final rule came out and they said we could use it for revenue loss, that's now set in stone. The Department of Treasury has to finalize the final rule. They cannot go backwards. So when we were having uncertainty, that was the difference between the interim final rule and the final rule. We've now moved into final rule. And that says that we could use this for practically anything as long as we meet general compliance with federal grants. So we can't buy certain things, like we couldn't buy a tank, probably. We probably couldn't buy Russian vodka right now, things like that. But besides that, it is the final rule states that we have broad authority to use this funding.
And my other question is that, and I'm not sure if it's even going to come to us or not, but the Sackler funds, because of the lawsuit that was at Sackler's for the pharmaceutical industry, some of that, I believe, is coming down to a state level. Will the town see any of those funds? Do we have any knowledge of where we sit in that line?
We have signed all the paperwork saying that we do want to participate in that process, and we would accept a settlement. The last I checked, there was not a timeline in terms of where that was going to come down in terms of funding, and or any allowable allowable activities or allowable expenditures related to that. So we don't really know where we are, except for we have raised our hand and said that we would be participating in that settlement.
Okay, and then the last question on ARPA funds, when ARPA funds are distributed, is there any time frame that they have to be used within or else they're forfeited?
I believe off the top of my head, we have to encumber them by 2024 and spend by 2026.
And any interest that was accrued has to be returned as well, or?
If we have to return money, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but considering how broad the current allowable costs are, I think we could do it.
Okay, all right.
Follow up on the rules. Is it possible for us to purchase something that would be cash flow generating? It was something that was brought to me by a constituent in town as a suggestion for us to consider. Some sort of investment that would put off a regularized, cash flow in the same way that a trust might or an endowment might.
Oh, parking meters.
Right. But I was thinking about land in Norwich, maybe.
That is a question that I definitely would want to get ahead of time and dig into with VLCT and just make sure before we possibly went from a brainstorming session down to drilling down that we knew whether or not that was allowable.
Sure,
Just to double check. Just want to have our belts and suspenders on.
Okay.
All right, moving on to Fund 30, which is our solid waste. Again, we're at 3/31/2022. We're looking at a glide path of 75%. The FY22 budget, annual budget was $952,806. Year to date for expenditures, we're at $435,244, which is 47%. Versus FY21, the budget was $630,630 for the annual budget. Year-to-date expenditures last year was $539,733. So we are at 57%. Both of these are well below the 75% glide path. As far as revenues go, FY22, the annual revenue was budgeted at $881,353. Year to date, we're at $602,571, which is 68%. Versus last year, the annual budget revenue was $922,183. We were year to date last year was $565,560. So a little bit lower at 61% last year. When I presented for December, we talked about the accounts receivable and how they were having some staffing issues, and I wasn't able to give you the numbers at that point. So for 3/31 for the accounts receivable balance was $36,076 versus last year, which was.
Gail, I'm sorry, I just want to let you know, I just got kicked off of Zoom really quickly, so my screen share disappeared, and so they don't have the numbers in front of them. I'll get back as fast as I can.
Sure. So FY21, the accounts receivable balance was $26,450. The balance is a little bit higher in FY22. As I mentioned, a delay in the billing. So if there's a delay in a billing, there's a delay in receiving your payments as well.
My apologies because I'm trying to get back on Zoom as well, but so in those solid waste numbers, that does not include the discussion that we had around C&D, because that was in April, I think, right?
That's correct.
So whatever that 180,000 or whatever we talked about at that
118.
118.
I believe so.
That's going to come out of that same fund. Right?
That will come out of this Fund 30. That's correct. And in addition to the 70,000 that the board approved back in November. So it's actually a total of 188,000, 190,000, the combined between the two of them.
So next time we see that, that'll be.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Have we seen anything for the C&D cleanup be spent yet?
No, United is struggling to get staff to actually transport it.
Are they still grinding?
We are done grinding. We are looking solely at transportation.
And have we reached the levels that the state is required for us to remove the product from the landfill?
reach the levels.
Right. Have we have the state come in and said, you're good, just get rid of what you got ground at?
They're waiting for us to transport the ground before they come back.
Ooh,
So they want to see that step completed. And I know that the leadership team over in Public Works is in constant contact with United, trying to push them and advocating for us to get to the top of the queue.
yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah. It's not your fault. It just seems like we got to get that done.
Yeah, we would really like to get it done as well.
I just want to see what the cost is going to be.
Okay, Gail, go ahead.
So just to follow up on that, a good tool is the payment manifest and making sure that you're looking at that and you will see the charges as they come in.
We're trying to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, it'll be a good tool for everybody to look at. And be
I
able
do
to-
look it over quite thoroughly.
I'm not saying that you
Yeah,
don't, but
I
I'm just
believe
giving it as a
do.
reminder that gives you a great place to make sure that. So anything else on Fund 30 before we move on? We're gonna
Oh,
move to-
one question about Fund 30. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you. Is there money in Fund 30 or I guess somewhere else within the budget that's designated for landfill closure?
The landfill closure, if you're talking about actual closure of the landfill, or are you talking about the closure of the solid waste facility?
Well, so there's two different things. Okay, explain the two different things, I guess. That's. I
Those are
need some.
two very, very different
Okay,
things.
please explain.
So the town of Hartford was required when they actually closed the landfill to set aside funding. And we have a reserve account that is specific for landfill closure. That includes all of the monitoring that is required when you close a landfill. Closing the solid waste facility, which is different than the landfill, the town does not have funding currently in place to close the solid waste facility.
So that brings up part of my previous question then. Where does the C&D lay within the realm of transfer station landfill? Is it part of the landfill and part of those funds or?
No, so the C&D pile is not a landfill expense or a closure. It's not related to the closure. So that's very, very important. So it is outlined in the annual audit that we have. And I think Tracy might have spoke a little bit about it as well. There are specific uses for the landfill closure. Again, it has to do with the monitoring. It has to do a lot with the safety to make sure that the environment is staying within the limits that it should be at. It's also making sure that the employees who work at the solid waste facility where the landfill is they're working in a safe environment. It's also ensuring that residents, as they go there to utilize the solid waste facility, that they're also there safely. The C&D pile is not in the landfill. And that is being covered by the operating budget of Fund 30. So the operating budget that was approved in FY22 has enough savings in it due to the way that the budget has been executed this year, that they have sufficient funding in there to cover that expense that we just barely spoke about with United.
And we continually put money into the landfill account, closure account, to make sure that we do the monitoring.
No, what happened when the landfill closed, the town was automatically required to deposit X amount of dollars, which valued 20 years worth of what the state required us to do. At that point in time, those funds were deposited into a separate bank account, and they are only utilized for specific uses that have to go to the landfill.
That doesn't show up on our budget anywhere.
No, it does not, because it is not, it is a reserve account, is not considered to be an operating account for Fund 30 that has a specific use.
Okay,
So
understood.
if Fund 30 ran short for whatever reason it may be,
We can't take. from
you
that fund.
cannot take money from that. Fund 30 would need to go to Fund 10, which is the general fund to cover any shortfalls that they have.
I got you. I assume that we couldn't steal from it, but I just, not steal
No, you
from,
cannot.
not steal from it, I'm sorry, but. wow.
You cannot utilize those funds.
Utilize the funds, yes.
Okay, let's get on to Fund 50.
Thank you.
We still got a lot to get through tonight, so let's move it along.
30 is important.
So Fund 50 is your White River Water, and the appropriations, the annual appropriations for FY 22 was 1.1 million.
Yes, go ahead.
Year to date for expenditures is 464,000. They've utilized 41% of their expenditures, which is well below the 75% of the glide path that we're expecting. FY 21, the budget was 1.1 million. Last year at this time, we had executed a little over 1 million, which is 91% of it. Keeping in mind that last year at this time, it included $593,000 and some change of capital expenses. Looking at your FY 22 revenues for Fund 50, again, the revenues were budgeted at 1.1 million. And for this year to date, we've had 978,000. FY 21 in comparison was 1.1 million. Year to date revenues was 1.4 million. That also includes 726,000 for loan reimbursement of capital items. The accounts receivable balance as of 3/31/22 was $208,927 versus last year at this time it was $193,944. All three of these items are all in the green light. I don't have any concerns for any of these items. Questions on Fund 50?
Okay.
Moving on to Fund 55, which is your Queechee Water. Would you like me to go through each one of these, or do any of you have questions on Fund 55 that you would like to talk about? They're all green lights.
Any questions, anyone? On those? I
Okay,
think we're
we'll move on
good.
to
We got
Fund.
the green light.
We'll move on to Fund 60 then. Fund 60 is all within the glide path as well. You have green lights on each one of these. And I don't have any concerns as the finance director.
Okay.
Questions?
Just quickly, have we hired the new billing technician?
That's a FY 23.
Oh, never mind.
Okay, and then
There we go, Kim, look at that.
Thank you.
moving on to the last one is Fund 65, and that's your Queechee wastewater. Again, all of these are well within the glide path of what we had expected, and you have green lights on all of them.
Questions, anyone overall about anything Gail said? Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you, Gail. Appreciate it.
So perfect. So my only takeaway that I have is I'm going to email about the delinquent taxes. Is there anything else that I missed that I didn't have written down?
Not that I'm aware of. That's it.
You usually have questions to drill deeper.
I mean, I'm good on this, and we asked a lot of questions last part. I mean, I'm gonna champion for ARPA funds to shut down the solid waste facility, but that's a different conversation. So but we hopefully will have the community members as well.
Definitely just keep your list going.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would advise everyone that if you have something you think would be interesting to use ARPA funds for, let's get a whole list. We'll do some public hearings, things like that as we get closer to the time. But, thanks, Gail. Appreciate it
You're
very
welcome.
much.
I think the only thing I want to add is that I know that town manager's already talked about, we have some pretty tight deadlines, and things are going to start coming really, really fast.
Yep.
And so I encourage each of you to keep that in mind, because it's going to be a lot of work and a lot of discussions that we need to make sure that we meet those deadlines and have as seamless process as we possibly can have.
And we do have it on the radar to do like a budget 101, right? So that we do a real overview of the budget process, including
with Gail
We,
on this
we
one?
have a whole education cycle coming up for all of you.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Good to know.
Perfect. Nice to see
All right.
everybody. You know,
Thank
wherever
you, Gail,
need
very
me.
much. All right, so our next item is the conflict of interest policy language change. So it was noticed that in our conflict of interest policy, excuse me, it still refers to the town's legislative body as the Board of Selectmen, which is not consistent with our modern practices. And actually, the charter describes this body as the Select Board. So the recommended motion would be that we globally replace the phrase. So throughout the entire policy, we change Board of Selectmen to Select Board. Any discussion about that? Okay, anyone want to make a motion? Dan?
I'd like to move that the select board authorize the town manager to globally replace the phrase Board of Selectmen to Select Board and adopt a conflict of interest policy.
Okay, second. You got a second, Kim? Discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, none. All right, there we go. So that will be replaced in the conflict of interest policy. All right, now our other item is the introduction of difference between operating and capital budgets. Tracy, is that you?
That is me.
All right.
And what I'm waiting for my computer to do is open up my PowerPoint for you all. And it's giving me that little spinny moment. So we might start here with the PDF here that's part of your package. Just give my computer a little bit of a break. So like we just said, we've got a little bit of a educational process going on. And this is one of the first ones. So previously on the town and money, you did hear from our town assessor, Joe Turner, on how we assess property and get your property taxes. So I know we have, we're kind of running a little bit late. So this is just also a simple PowerPoint presentation on the 3 different types of funding we're going to be talking about, operating, capital, and outside. Why do we need to know this? Budget season is coming. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, it's like winter is coming, but budget season is coming. And that's when we set the town's annual operation budget in time for town meeting day. 80% of that funding comes from property taxes. 20% comes for fee for service. We're going to set those fees in June for fiscal year 23. Those are the costs to get a new water meter, the cost to pay for a dog license, the cost to register for camp, the cost to buy a plot in the town managed cemetery over on Christian Street. So we're going to talk about those fees for service and set those in June. Operating, the best way that I think about this after all this time is this is our day-to-day, our maintenance, and our small equipment. So the operation, the day-to-day operation of the town comes from the operation budget. And we also do include those reserves as savings for larger purchases. So you'll see deposits into reserves accounts. But for the most part, we're talking about the things that we do that we use up in an annual basis. So, you know, yes, you might see a lawnmower in there, realizing that we're not going to break a lawnmower in a year, but you're also going to see paper and postage and trainings and memberships. Bond payments also come from our operating budget. So when we're talking about bonding, we need to be aware that that's part of our debt service. Those are the debts that we have to other people. We need to pay those out on an operating budget. One thing to keep in mind, because we run on an annual budget that's voted on by the voters in the community, we cannot necessarily go into multi-year contracts except for in very specific circumstances for a project base. You'll also hear us talk about municipal leasing, and that's because technically we only have a year-by-year approved budget. So we have each year we have to reapprove the budget. There's a lot of caveats when we go to outside funding for those things. Luckily, the Vermont Bond Bank is amazing, and they work with a lot of towns even smaller than us, so they know where we're coming from. When we refer to capital, when we refer to a capital expense, A good way to think about that is things that last longer, major equipment. And when I say major, I mean over $150,000 or a big truck. So again, we're not talking about that push lawnmower that we're going to buy for the fire department. We're not talking about necessarily small equipment like a printer. We're talking about the big stuff. I think about this as major underground projects. These are the things that we do to upgrade utilities, roadbed reconstruction, things like that. And major above ground projects like the pool. That's a capital project. We, like most municipalities, likely fund through bonding, municipal leasing, or using reserves. We're not going to necessarily put a $3 million pool into the operating expense, tax on that 1 year, and then pay it off. We're going to bond for that. Here's something new for all of us to consider. We've talked a little bit about this tonight for 2023 and beyond, because these are some long-term funding strategies from the state and the feds, is our outside funding. We have our town ARPA allowance that you just heard Gail talk about. We have Vermont's allocation of the federal infrastructure bill. They're using that on a project base. So Vermont is managing specific projects that they are putting their federal infrastructure bill funding into. We also can see that the state is making an effort to fund climate action mitigation techniques, mitigation projects. And we also know that the state provides other funding through the state budget. They are in the middle of that right now. They should be done soon. I know that COVID has made that process go a little bit slower. And so all three of those, besides our ARPA allowance, are still in flux in terms of the allowable activities and how those programs will actually be monitored. I'm keeping an eye on it. Dana Clausen keeps an eye on it for climate action. And then most of the other department heads keep an eye on things that may be related to their own work in terms of what the state is doing. You're going to see our upcoming topics.
Can I stop you on a funding thing?
Yeah.
So
let's go back.
Yeah, back in for a second here. So in terms of funding, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. In terms of funding, when we have a state project that takes place within the town of Hartford, such as the roundabouts that took place this last year, the infrastructure aspect that's under those projects that the state does, what portion of the infrastructure is the town's versus the state's when we do a project such as that?
That one's a little funky because that's actually a state-owned road. So it got a little bit more complicated. Can we talk it through with the VA cutoff bridge that is coming up?
Please.
Okay. Every project kind of depends. So that's the sticky part too, is the state might say, oh, we're doing a matching grant for rural bridges that are major thoroughfares in a town. And we're going to pay 90% and you pay 10%, but it's yours. And you're responsible for all upkeep, maintenance, and we're going to build it for you. But when it fails in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, when the life cycle of the bridge owns, we're not responsible for that anymore. That's totally up to you, and this program may or may not exist. When it comes to like South Main Street, we've used the state revolving funds for those, right? So that's a totally different program where they forgive anywhere between 50, 90, and 100%, depending on the stage of the project. So they might forgive 100% on design, 50% on construction, or they just might offer us an interest-free loan to pay that off. Again, those typically they say that's yours to keep. You are responsible for maintenance. We help finance it because we know that most towns and cities in Vermont don't have that kind of liquid assets to dump into major construction projects. But we're not responsible for any of the upkeep. So for the most part, when it's our own property, these processes are to help local municipalities that don't have that kind of money, and that includes us, obtain that money for vital infrastructure, knowing that if our infrastructure fails, for especially things like water and wastewater, that's a huge public health crisis.
So the portion of our infrastructure that lies underneath the state project is fully updated to current standards. But at the termination of that project is where they terminate and revert back to our existing infrastructure, correct? Such as if they replaced a water line that was a 6-inch water line with an 8-inch water line, at the end of their project limits, we would revert back to that 6-inch water line again.
Yes,
correct?
yeah. So if the project is for this much space in the town, outside of that space is not a
Of course
state
it
funded
is.
project, and then it goes back to the.
But no matter where the state works, we do get new improved infrastructure.
Yeah, to the moment. Now, knowing that some of these projects take years, let's say that the minimum allowable water main is 8 inches when the project starts, and it goes all the way through design and we hit construction, and the minimum changes to 10. It's likely that the state is going to go, we spec'd this all out and got to this point with an 8, we're sticking with an 8. So there are provisions in the contract of what the time period is that they build to. So they won't continually change parameters if things change. Does that make sense? Like if we built a sidewalk and they said it had to be this wide and it changes after we've already done planning, they're not going to go back and re-engineer it.
No, I understand. Thank you.
So yeah, good news, we get new stuff. Bad news, it's ours to keep. So we have to be prepared for that.
That's good news.
Yeah, so we do need to be more cognizant of when we do get new things that we are aware of the ongoing costs. So whether that's new sidewalks or more complex infrastructure, we just need to be aware that maintenance is ours.
Can I just, just follow up on the, when you said being a cutoff bridge, that was what I was wondering, that like the contribution that the town needed to make to that project that we missed. Is there any chance that the infrastructure money can pay for stuff like that, like a portion of the project?
So I have a question out to VLCT about that exact project and the matching portion. Some of the information that I've received indicates that possibly part of Vermont's allocation of the federal infrastructure grant bill would be to forgive our portion of that. Then there's some conflicting information. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I would like all of you to as well, that possibly is correct, because that is a 10, I think we're contributing 5% on that. So out of the $1 million that we're contributing, it's a $20 million bridge. I know that all of us in this room can think of a lot of things we could do with that $1 million. But again, VLCT, I have a question out to them saying, is this my reading? Is there clarity on this? So that's the uncertainty that we're dealing with some of these other piles of money.
Yeah, my question is, based on what you've just said about the state maybe paying for something and then we become responsible over time. What happens in the process if something like climate change, we have some flooding while things are being built? Are they gonna correct it? Or we share that responsibility?
Each one of these giant contracts that we enter into probably has slightly different provisions. My answer to that question would be, it depends. And we could end up having a bit of an argument between, say, like an act of God provision, where, we would have to have that discussion between the two parties as to what exactly the contract said with regard to natural disasters. So let's say we get halfway through the VA cutoff bridge and a flood wipes the whole thing out. Definitely we'd be opening up that binder with all of our background information and saying, okay, what happens now? And possibly arguing with the state a little bit.
Just to follow up, I know we're gonna need to move on, but when they were doing the public sessions for, the state was doing presentations about the roundabout projects, and we've been talking a lot at the time about the need for drainage and 100-year storm culverts and things like that. And these were like the 25-year storm culverts and I, sort of push back and I'm like, well, shouldn't we be thinking about larger culverts? They're like, well, no, this meets the criteria for the qualifications. And so then you would wonder if you get a giant 100-year storm and the whole thing is washed out, like whose fault is that? And I would blame the state, frankly.
Yeah, there are a lot of, these contracts are pretty thick in terms of who is what, and I know that they change too. The state's got more lawyers than we do. So yeah, I know we're a little behind. We had some good talks today. Upcoming topics on May 17th. This is all tentative. Of course, things change. We've got new stuff going in and out. We're going to do an operating budget process 101. So showing you a little bit internally what goes on with the staff and how those decisions end up coming to you. The Climate Action Steering Team is providing an update on their implementation and what they want to prioritize time, effort, and money on. And we're just going to open that conversation about the town ARPA funding priorities. So that's going to be our first time really touching on that. Again, I hope that the state has a little bit more clarity, but we don't know if that's going to be there. Mid-June. Oh, sorry, Kim.
I'm sorry, but so would this be, we say it's a discussion, but this wouldn't necessarily be like a community forum type discussion. Certainly not that meeting's gonna be jam-packed, but could we potentially like look at actually making dates for those?
I'm looking at Mike, but I think that would be something that I know the staff would love to have clarity on, is having a discussion just with all of you generally where you want to go. So that way we can start working those in around, the variety of other public meetings that we have.
Would that be something that, and I don't want to ask more of the planning department, but would that be something that, like, I'm thinking back to the community sessions that the planning department did around the town plan update. And they were very well attended. They were they do a really good job of promoting. Would that be something that planning department, because any of the capital?
I think we could all work together and use their expertise, but also manage their workload, because I know they have a lot of work going on. And as we get closer, we're going to look at some of our neighbors that have already gone through this community planning process, and I'm going to reach out to them and see how that looks. So yeah,
I'd like to have some public forums to discuss this, so we get as many people involved as possible, because I've said before, we're unlikely to see this kind of money coming our way ever again. So I want to make sure we get a lot of people giving us like their thoughts on how we can best spend it. So that's something we'll look to schedule upcoming. Great.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you all, like your brainstorms, and then also your brainstorms for how best to reach people, knowing the staffing and technology constraints. Mid-June, we're going to talk about capital improvement priorities. The staff are updating those as we go along. And we're also going to do the FY23 fee for service schedule. So you all have to approve that, and we're going to talk about that. And in July and August, we're going to start talking about the climate action FY24 priorities and the budget FY24 priorities. So those are those kind of 3,000-foot views that you all have of maybe where you want to go, that we can drill in and talk about what actually needs to happen to execute those. And that's it for me. This is just the beginning of a long and fruitful series of discussions as we kind of talk through all of this information. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Questions for Tracy? Okay, thank you very much, Tracy. We'll go to commission reports. So we'll start with Lanny and come down this way. Do you have any, Lanny?
Yeah, the Charter Commission met, elected FX Flynn and Lynn Bohai as co-chairs, and elected Gabrielle Luke as the vice chair, and Dan, can't remember what his last name is. Not as the scribe, I guess, the clerk for the position. We've met twice. We're still going over the languages that we want to have changed. There is a question that I have to bring back to this board in terms of language, in terms of the, I guess I just asked a question now as far as the cannabis, but we'll discuss that at some other point in time.
Okay, good.
Nothing to report, Mr.
Nothing
Chair.
to report. Ally? Ally's still on with us.
Yeah.
Yes, I am here. Thanks. So for HCOREI, the committee is hoping to have Hartford's new peer support advocate and police social worker come to a future meeting just to get introduced and to better understand their work. And there was some really great discussion about the community public safety review and how that process might involve young people, families, and schools. So the school board will further discuss if and how they want to be involved in that community safety review process. I know more discussion needs to be had on that review as a whole. There was also great discussion about the importance of and the opportunities for a public information officer, which is part of the strategic plan. And the committee should be coming to an upcoming agenda in probably sometime this month to do kind of their quarterly update and ask for updates around the strategic plan. Resilient Hartford, there is still one committee spot open. So if anybody is interested in that committee's work, really encourage folks to attend. That committee does really, really wonderful work. There was discussion around plans and preparation for the tree planting in the Clifford Park Food Forest that happened this past Saturday. And the committee is still working on the right location for an Abediki garden. And it might actually end up being situated in the Clifford Park Food Forest, which would be really exciting. And due to the committee members' capacity, they've decided to postpone work on the Harvest Festival until 2023. But I think that's in the best interest of everybody and what those folks are holding. And then the Ad Hoc Committee on Emergency Shelter has not met since I did the last commission update at our last select board meeting, but I did just want to flag to this group that I think it would be helpful to have a discussion in either the next May meeting or the following about kind of the future of that committee, as we had discussed, the board at the time had discussed in that February meeting before our new members joined us about the possibility of a standing committee on affordable housing and homelessness, and what just that discussion might be and how we might move forward on that. And then also kind of put a cap and date extension on the emergency shelter committee's charge for June. So just would hope that and recommend that before June, we have some sort of discussion, at least to give that committee some clarity on next steps or conclusion of their work.
Thank you, Ally. Mary, any reports?
nothing more.
Dan? Nothing? Kim?
Another 4-hour plus planning commission public hearing on Monday, April 25th. After they approved one subdivision application, there was a robust discussion with a lot of public input relating to the Twin Pines St. Paul's plan development application. And the meeting minutes actually do a pretty great job of capturing most of the comments. So if anyone's interested in more details, I would definitely check out the minutes on the town agenda center. No decision was made by the commission that night. It will be continued to a future date, I think tentatively May 23rd. And yeah, and Ally, thank you for covering HCOREI. So I'm good there.
Great, thanks, Kim. So the school board last meeting, they got updates from the principals of the Ottaquiche School, White River School, Hartford Middle School, and Hartford Area Career and Technical Center. I recommend checking out the minutes on those if you want to learn about some of the more interesting stuff that's going on in our schools. The climate action, they're working on getting an update on funding they might get, or the towns might get from the legislature or any sort of climate action funding. And copies of the climate action plan are going to be distributed to the local libraries and the Bugbee Center. So that's that. All right, that wraps up commission reports. Consent agenda.
My turn?
Kim,
Unless anyone else would like it.
anyone else want to do the consent agenda? No, we're good. All right.
Go for
Chair-
it.
Huh?
Go for it.
Thank you. I move that the select board approve the consent agenda, including payroll ending April 30, 2022, meeting minutes of April 19, 2022, AP manifests of April 29 and May 3rd, 2022, and the already approved meeting dates, May 17 and May 31, 2022.
Second from Dan. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, let's do it. We got one more motion.
Chair, make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Had to get that one.